All right, so to break it down, what you're trying to do is you're trying to take up the three equations and you want to pair them off. That way you can get two equations with two variables. So you have a couple of options here. The first option I would say is you can take E1 and E2 and you can combine those, right? So that would be a pairing of these two right here. So you can pair those two. Or you can go with E2 and E3. So you can pair off E2 and E3. That would be those two right there. And then you have a third option. You can go with E1 and E3, right? So you can pair up E1 and E3. Now, it doesn't matter which one you choose. It's your choice. And that's where a lot of students have trouble, is they're like, my choice, tell me what to do. So what I'm going to suggest is right now, let's go with, let's get rid of the x's. So I'm going to go E1 and E2. So I'm going to use this one here. And then I'm just going to go ahead and use E2 and E3. And I'm going to start off by eliminating the x's. So when I look at E1 and E2, so now my heavy focus is going to be on these two equations right here. When I look at E1 and E2 and I try to get rid of the x's, I'm going to try to figure out how do I get that 3x and that 2x to be essentially canceling each other out, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply the 3x, that's this equation right there, by 2. That way I get 6x. Now, if you're like, that's not going to cancel, you're right, which is why I'm going to multiply the second equation by 3, which is going to give me also 6x. So I am going to multiply the first equation, which we are cleverly calling E1. I'm going to take the first equation, E1, and I'm going to multiply it by 2. That's going to turn this thing into 6x right there. And that's what we want. We want it to be 6x. Now, if you're not exactly sure why we want it to be 6x, because we can make this one also 6x by multiplying the second equation, E2, by 3. So if I multiply the first equation by 2 and I multiply the second equation by 3, I can make these two x's be both 6x. Now, on the surface, they're not going to cancel. So what we need, and the reason they don't cancel is because one's going to be positive 6x, one's going to be negative 6x, is we need one of them to be negative. Now, if one of them was already negative, this is great. But since one of them is, both of them are positive, we need one of them to be negative. We get to decide, are we going to put the negative on the 2 so that we get negative 6x in the first equation, or are we going to put the negative on the 3 so we can get the negative 6x on the second equation? Now, some people are like, well, why not just do it to both? Make them both negative. And now we have the same exact problem we had before, is we're going to have two negative 6x's, which means nothing's going to cancel. We want one to be positive and one to be negative. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, let's go with a negative 3 and a positive 2. So now I need to multiply my first equation by 2. Now I'm going to multiply that by 2, 6, that by 2, 4, that by 2, 8, that by 2, 22. Let's try that one more time. The 3x is going to get multiplied by 2. That's going to be 6x. The 2y is going to get multiplied by 2. That's going to be 4y. This 4z is going to get multiplied by 2. That's going to be 8z. So we have plus 8z. And don't forget to multiply the last number, the 11, by 2. That's going to be 22. So now I've taken care of the 2 times E1. Next, I'm going to multiply E2 by negative 3. So now I multiply. 2x times negative 3 is negative 6x. Now notice that I'm writing it right underneath the equation, the first equation. That allows me to combine them when it's ready. Negative 3 times negative y, be careful, that is just positive 3y right there. So we have plus 3y. Negative 3 times positive 3z, that's going to give us negative 9z. So we have negative 9z here is equal to 4 times negative 3, which is negative 12. Now, the whole purpose behind this is that it's going to allow us to cancel out those two x's right there. So the reason we are choosing 2 and 3 for those right equations is it's going to give you 6 and negative 6 right there so that they cancel out. I really don't care what the value is. I just need them to cancel. So now that they've canceled, I'm not going to write anything underneath it. Then I have 7y. And then the 8z and the negative 9z is going to give me negative z. And the 22 and the negative 12 is going to give me 10. So this is how I get one equation to have two variables. I did that by combining E1 and E2. Now I'm going to do the same exact thing for E2 and E3, except this time I'm going to choose to use different numbers. Because with E2 and E3, when I look at E2 and E3, I notice that my x's, which I'm still trying to eliminate the x's. I want the x's to be gone. That way it can match up with the y and the z in this equation, right? No more x's. I need to multiply the top equation, this one right here, by 5, and this one here by 2. So my focus now is to multiply E2, and we're going to write this down. My focus is to multiply E2 by 5. So we're going to multiply E2 by 5. That way this can be 10x. And then I'm going to multiply E3 by 2. So I'm going to go 2 E3, because then that's going to make this 10x as well. You'll notice that since they're going to both be positive 10x, nothing's going to cancel. So I'm going to make sure I multiply the second equation, or the first equation, by a negative. So one of them has to be multiplied by a negative. We get to make the decision which one. I'm going to do the second one. Why? I don't know. I just chose it, right? All right, now multiply. So we're going to go 5 times E2. This is our E2. So we're going to go 5 times 2x. That's 10x. So I'm going to put 10x right there. Then I'm going to go 5 times negative y. Be careful. That's negative 5y. Then I'm going to go 5 times 3z. That's 15z. And then I'm going to go 5 times 4, which is 20. So equals 20. Now I need to do the same exact thing, except this time I'm going to do it with the E3. Negative 2 times E3, negative 2 times 5x is negative 10x. Look at that beautiful 10x, negative 10x going to cancel right now. Negative 2 and negative 3, that's positive 6y. And then negative 2 and 5z is going to give us negative 10z, so I have a negative 10z. And then negative 2 times negative 1 is going to give us positive 2. So I have positive 2 right there. Once I have this, I'm going to go ahead and combine the two equations. The 10x and the negative 10x, those guys cancel out. The 5x with the 5y, which is negative, and the 6y, which is positive, is going to give me positive y. The 15z and the negative 10z is positive 5z. And then we have equals to 22. I've now combined E2 and E3 to get an equation that has two variables, y and z, and I've combined E1 and E2 to have an equation where I have two variables, y and z as well. Now, if you notice that at this point you have two equations, but you have three variables, you got rid of the wrong variable twice. So you want to make sure you get rid of the same variable in both of them, both of those x's. I no longer care about E1, E2, E3 right now. I just want to focus on my new equation, so we'll call this one E4, and we'll call this one E5. Now, we do essentially the same exact thing we did on the last problem, except our focus is going to be on E4 and E5. I need to get rid of one of my variables. I either need to get rid of the y, or I need to get rid of the z. Okay, that's the goal right now, is to get rid of those two things. Some people find it helpful to write the equations on top of each other so you can analyze or you can compare the equations. So some people might write 7y minus z is equal to 10. And at this time, I'd like to just reiterate that organization is super important with these problems. And I would say rewriting the problem, while it sucks and takes a lot of time is really what you want to do. Take your time. The smallest error is going to cause some huge problems. All right, so I have E4 and I have E5. I'm going to cancel out my y's. So I need to multiply the top one to make it look like the bottom. Well, there's not a whole lot I can multiply by. So I'm going to multiply the top by 1, and I'm going to multiply the bottom by 7. That way they both can be 7. Now, some of you are like, multiply by 1, that does nothing. Exactly. Sometimes you don't have to do a whole lot. All right. So we're going to say E4 is not going to change. So E4 is going to stay E4. However, E5, we're going to multiply E5 by 7. So I multiply E5 by 7, and what that does is it gives me a 7y on the top and a 7y on the bottom. Now, some of you are like, but that's not going to cancel. And I agree with you 100%, which is why we're going to make sure we multiply E5 by negative 7. And now we go through the math. E4, nothing changes. 7y minus z equals 10. Now we need to do E5 times negative 7. So we're going to go negative 7 times y is negative 7y. Negative 7 times 5z is negative 35z. And negative 7 times 22 is negative 152, I think. All right, I don't have my calculator. I try to do that math in my head really quickly, and I take it back. We're going to go with 154 on that, okay? Now you'll notice that the y's are going to cancel. So we combine these two equations here. The y's cancel out. The 35z and the z become negative 36z is equal to 154, and 10 is going to give us negative 144. You'll notice you have now a single equation with a single variable that you can solve by dividing both sides by negative 36. This gives us z is equal to 4. Now that you found your first answer, you're going to take this quote-unquote answer and you're going to plug it into one of your newer equations, either E4 or E5, you get to pick. Now, I'm looking at E5, and E5 is a nice equation. Y is already by itself, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this 4, and I'm going to plug it into that z over there so that I have y plus 5 times 4, because that's what z is equal to 22. This gives me y plus 20 is equal to 22. Solve by taking the 20 away from both sides of the equation, and we get y is equal to 2. Now that you have two of these answers, so you have y is 2, and you have that z is 4, you can take these two solutions and plug them back in to one of your original equations, E1, E2, or E3. So we're going to plug it into one of those guys up there. Let's go ahead and pick 3x plus 2y. So we're going to grab this one. Let's grab this equation right here. Oh, look at that. We're just going to take that equation, and all we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and plug in our y and our z into that equation. So we're going to take this y of 2, plug it in there. We're going to take this z of 4 and plug it in there, and we now have 3x plus 2 times the new y, which is 2, plus 4 times the new z, which is 4, is equal to 11. So we have 3x plus 4 plus 16 is equal to 11. Collecting like terms, we get 3x plus 20 is equal to 11. Subtracting the 20 from both sides, we get 3x is equal to negative 9. And dividing both sides by 3, we find out that x is equal to negative 3. I now have 3, or all 3 of my parts of my solution. We now take these solutions and we write them in alphabetical order. X, Y, Z. My answer to the system is negative 3, comma 2, comma 4. There are lots of ways you can do this problem. So I would suggest following this way, and then as you start to understand it, you can change your style. All right. If you have any other questions, please let me know, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible.